Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ether Tale Radio Theater. I'm your host, Scott Paulson. Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, I didn't have to bring in any slapsticks or any little tiny scale model doors, and didn't have to bring my harp in because we're just celebrating National Poetry Month this month, and we don't have to have any bells or whistles, do we? We just got these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful poems that we're going to read to you. And my first guest tonight is Libby Webber. Say, Libby, would you say hello to the people? That'll be your sound check, in fact.
Hi, everybody.
And that's the sum total of the sound check for you for this evening. Apparently it's working. Now, Libby, you wrote a book that is entitled to be titled Risk Averse, a Year in Daily Sonnets. And it's written by you, Libby Webber, and here you are in person. Now, this journey of publishing that book, we were all so proud of you and excited, and you really did it. You did it, Libby Webber. And you've had a chance to do some public readings with it and gotten some great reviews and made some interesting short lists of must-reads on various sites. I'm sure that your family is so proud of you, even your little dog.
Both of them are, in fact.
Excellent.
That's what they tell me.
So, this happened on a personal dare, ?
Yes. So one day I said to myself, I would like to do some more writing on a regular basis. I'd been writing fiction for some time. I'd participated in National Novel Writing Month, and I'd found that to be kind of a cool experience to, have the process of writing every day. But the problem is when I got to the end of National Novel Writing Month, all I had was a large amount of words that were not exactly usable. And so what I decided to do was to make something every day. And so I would be doing the writing process that I found so attractive, but to have something finished at the end of the day. And, of course, if you're doing a daily writing thing, you can't have anything that's too huge. Otherwise, quality will begin to suffer. So I thought about what kind of things that I like to write. And
you settled in on sonnets.
I did.
And it was because of your love of Shakespeare?
It's my love of Shakespeare, and rhyming verse has kind of always been one of my superpowers. So ever since I was a kid, I was pulling Weird Al Yankovic and rewriting the words to songs. I started reading Shakespeare a lot when I was in middle school and high school, and I went on a complete Shakespeare kick when I was in high school. And so I started writing sonnets because I really liked Shakespeare's and what he did with them. The thing that really attracted me to the form was it's a form most people think of it as, it has to have 14 lines. Mm-hmm. It has to have rhyming. It has to be written in rhyming verse. So Shakespeare likes to do his in iambic pentameter, which has 5 metric feet in each line and a very specific rhyme scheme. But
short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long,
short, long. And so that's ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum.
So it's doable.
Ba-dum. It's absolutely doable. And it's also only 14 lines, which is nice. But the cool thing about the sonnet that not everyone knows who hasn't really studied the form is that it's not about having, 4 stanzas and a couplet at the end. It's about having 2 separate parts. You've got your octave, the first 8 lines, and the sestet, the final 6 lines. And between those 2 sections, and if you look at a Shakespearean sonnet, it's between the second stanza and the third stanza, there has to be a turn or a break. Where you have to sort of change your perspective. And so if you're writing a sonnet about a dog, and how he looks, then, at the turn you could focus on some other aspect of the dog, like how the dog smells, or if the dog is sitting on you, how sharp the dog's elbows are, that kind of thing. So there has to be some sort of shift. A
pivot. And your dance background helped with that, obviously.
Most definitely. Well, not really, but...
I would love to hear one of the poems, one of the sonnets from your book. Do you have one picked out that you could read to us?
Gosh, I've got 365 of them, plus a bonus sonnet for Leap Day if ever needed. So,
excellent.
But yeah, so let's go ahead.
And again, this is Libby Webber reading from her new book of sonnets. And again, this book is entitled to be titled Risk Averse, a Year in Daily Sonnets. And here's Libby Webber reading.
So this sonnet is from April 21st, and this is entitled True Story. While wandering today, I chanced on peace, though I did not perceive that it was he, because he walked with love, who never ceased to look beyond his quiet company. I greeted love, who knew that I was one who knew her kindness well, and so I bent, receiving ardent kisses in return, all but ignoring peace, who seemed content. But when I rose, peace held aloft his arm and folded me into a warm embrace. While unexpected, I could see no harm in letting peace suffuse my private space. His strength was awesome. Then I was released. When you greet love, then there may follow peace.
That's beautiful. Now, I think you told me the real story behind that sonnet, and it's a surprise.
So when I say...
Give us the real story now.
When I say it's a true story, I mean that in a very literal way. I work at University of California, San Diego, and sometimes when I'm walking around campus, I encounter interesting individuals who are on campus, as an academic or just visiting or, there to talk to the students who are there. And I met this guy, and he introduced himself. He said, "Hello, my name is Peace." And I noticed he had a very cute little dog with him. And I'm like, "Can I pet your dog?" And he said, "Yes, this is my dog, Love." So literally, I got ardent kisses from little Love, who was a love. And then Peace was one of those gregarious people who likes to give hugs to people he's just met. And he asked me very kindly if I would be okay with that. And I'm like, yes, I am fine with receiving a hug.
That is important. You have to ask first. Yeah.
And he did. So thank you, Peace. If you're listening, I remember you.
Now, there are a lot of footnotes in your book. I can just tell by being on this other side of this table. What are the footnotes for this poem? There's something, I can see teeny tiny writing. What does it say?
Yeah.
It's revealing the story?
It's pretty much the story that I just told you.
Very good.
Let's see. This is one of those encounters I couldn't make up, is how I introduced that.
Excellent. So this book is worth having just so you can have all those footnotes as well, obviously.
I like to think so. It's more than just the story of the sonnet. There are lots of them that have literary allusions or refer to movies or television. There's a Harry Potter themed sonnet. There are several references to Harry Potter. There are a lot of references to Star Trek and Doctor Who.
And that's revealed in some of your footnotes. And
correct.
You told me earlier when we were talking about it that you wanted to go with a real paper published book because there were so many footnotes, and it's hard for a reader to enjoy footnotes in an online format, apparently.
Yeah, I was of two minds, and it ultimately turned out to be a financial decision, and also a matter of time and expedience, because it would take me a very long time to program all the footnotes in such a way that it would be useful. The advantage of having an ebook is, of course, the portability. Not everyone has the hand strength to hold a 400-page book, and there's some people with visual impairments that it makes it difficult to read. They can't read the tiny footnotes, and even a 12 or 14-point font, such as the sonnets are printed in, it can be difficult for them to read as well. So being able to adjust the size up and down. But if anyone out there is in need of a version that they can zoom in on, just give me a holler. I might have a PDF version that I would be willing to give you.
Super duper. Now, I'd love to hear another poem from your book.
Sure. I have many of them. Let's see.
You have these very colorful tabs pointing your way, too, I noticed.
They are thematic. So I've got I have some sort of general spring-themed ones, and then the blue ones are just ones that I particularly like.
Let's go for blue.
Okay, so next in blue, what do I have? I have Idle Theme, and this is from July 12th. And the only footnote is actually on the title. So as an example of an explanatory footnote, Idle Theme, the title, comes from Puck's epilogue to Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. So this is Idle Theme from July 12th. Read by me, Libby Webber, from my book, Risk a Verse, A Year in Daily Sonnets. Oh, daydreams, turn to night dreams when I sleep, and let my slumbering mind elect to stay enwrapped in luscious pleasure for to steep repose in bliss, and keep bad dreams at bay. For yearning daydreams much prefer to play while masquerading as reality, which makes them lack the sumptuous array of one's subconscious mind in reverie. So take my much-beloved memory and aspirations for the things to come, suffuse them with surprising novelty to make a whole whose glory strikes me dumb. In sleep, desire. Desire, then, to sleep, and give to dreaming dreams that I will keep.
Well, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well written and so well spoken.
Thank you.
And I'm in the mood for a springtime poem now.
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Well, I've got a slightly silly one.
Sounds good to me.
And this one I think I can preface by saying this is one of those that I took the path of least resistance in, writing this one, because that was just a thing that I was thinking about that made me laugh. So this poem is called Lemonhead, and after the brand of lemon-flavored candies.
Yes, the hard ones where if you threw them in a movie theater, they would hurt someone. Yeah,
exactly. And if you bite down on them when they're too big, you get your teeth stuck together. So this is Lemonhead from March 13th.
And this, I think, the year was 2014 for most of these.
That is correct. So that was a very hot, very dry winter. So all my spring sonnets actually they start in February, but this one is from March. And Lemonhead. I spied a lemon hanging on a tree, as green as the surrounding leaves, and of a height with forehead, and I laughed to see the danger of a bonking from above. And every time I passed the lemon tree, I dodged at the last moment to avert collision twixt the unripe fruit and me. With its proximity, I liked to flirt. Until one homeward walk in falling night, while half-formed sonnets danced about my brain, distracted by these visions, I walked right into the lemon. Was it preordained? As Newton's apple gave us gravity, a lemon's Libby produced poetry.
Brava, Libby Webber, brava. And I wanted to hear a springtime poem because spring on the UC San Diego campus where we both work, it's always exciting when National Poetry Month comes along in April.
My favorite month.
Yes. And also something I do on campus in April is I always make sure that we exhibit these wonderful bee specimens that were given to us by James Hung, Ph.D. He had a lab at UCSD, and the several years that he was on campus getting his Ph.D., he and his students gathered up hundreds of specimens of bees and identified them and labeled them, and we're so lucky to have those specimens in these glass cases, and they look so beautiful. And his wife also took photographs of them using a microscopic camera, and they all look like Hindu gods ready for their close-up for Bollywood extravaganza. It's amazing. And this year when I exhibited the bees, I thought, okay, it's National Poetry Month as well, so those bee specimens are surrounded by bee poems. And I wrote to James Hung just to let him know that's what we're doing. Every year we do something a little bit different with those bees. And I asked him if he had a favorite bee poem, and it turns out that he does. One of his students, and you'd call this to his attention, there was a haiku poem written by his mentor, Dr. Karen Goodell of Ohio State University, and she wrote this on a data sheet describing the bee that was shown. She was monitoring these pumpkin flowers for a project that they worked on together to document which bee species pollinated pumpkin flowers in that region. And she saw lots of male squash bees that were cruising around the pumpkin flowers in search of female bees, but not landing in the flowers to actually provide pollination services. I guess they're just a little girl crazy is what these bees were. And here's the little haiku that Dr. Karen Goodell wrote. Male pepunepis, cruising flowers for females, not pollinating. So that's his favorite bee poem. And we all gathered up bee poems today for this show. And Gabriel Pan is here with us today. And Gabriel has a very important bee poem that reveals a fantastic tradition. Telling the bees is this tradition where, like in the 1800s in New England, if you were a New England family that happened to have some bees, and a lot of families did, and if there was a death in your family, you had to go to the bee boxes and converse with each box and let them know that a family member had died. And there are a lot of theories about where this tradition came. It's probably back from a Celtic time, but it's certainly just a wonderful excuse to be alone and have to face this death in the family. And also for marriages, which could be just as frightening. The bees had to be told about that too. What a great opportunity for someone just to go off alone and spend some time with the bees and let them know that there's been a change in the family. And Gabriel, you've got a poem that is based on this tradition, and tell us about it. What are you about to read to us?
Hey, Scott. Yeah, I've got a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier called Telling the Bees. Interestingly enough, doing some of the research on this old process, basically, you're right. This covered all of Europe. This is Germany and France and England, and it was actually a very old European custom to go ahead and let the bees know everything from weddings to people returning home from long trips to deaths in the family, and handled in different ways for different cultures. But essentially, like you say, getting down to going ahead and letting nature know the changes in the home. It was really fascinating to go ahead and see that. John Greenleaf Whittier was an American poet, 19th century, one of the famous 19th century poets. His name is known with Oliver Wendell Holmes, Longfellow, William Cullen Bryant.
He was an A-lister.
Yeah, he was really one of America's best-loved poets of that era. Oddly enough, he hasn't gotten quite as much... in the 20th century, he hasn't gotten quite as much talk as those like Poe and Longfellow, but he's still around in a very great deal because he was loved for his simplicity, for his love of nature, for his positiveness. And Telling the Bees was actually one of the favorites that people had from his collections.
Well, we'd love to hear it. So this is Gabriel Pan reading Telling the Bees.
Telling the Bees by John Greenleaf Whittier. Here is the place, right over the hill, runs the path I took. You can see the gap in the old wall still, and the stepping stones in the shallow brook. And there's the house with the gate red barred, and the poplars tall, and the brown's barn length, and the cattle yard, and the white horns tossing above the wall. There are the beehives ranged in the sun, and down by the brink of the brook are her poor flowers weed overrun, pansy and daffodil, rose and pink. A year has gone as the tortoise goes, heavy and slow, and the same rose blows, and the same sun glows, and the same brook sings of a year ago. There's the same sweet clover smell in the breeze, and the June sun warm tangles his wings of fire in the trees, setting as then over Fernside Farm. I mind me how, with a lover's care, from my Sunday coat, I brushed off the burrs and smoothed my hair, and cooled at the brookside my brow and throat. Since we parted, a month had passed, to love a year. Down through the beeches I looked at last, on the little red gate and the well-swept near. I can see it all now, the slantwise rain of light through the leaves, the sundown's blaze on her window pane, the bloom of her roses under the eaves. Just the same as a month before, the house and the trees, the barn's brown gable, the vine by the door. Nothing changed but the hives of bees. Before them, under the garden wall, forward and back, went drearily singing the chore girl small, draping each hive with a shred of black. Trembling I listened, the summer sun had the chill of snow, for I knew she was telling the bees of one, gone on the journey we all must go. Then I said to myself, my Mary weeps for the dead today. Happily her blind old grandsire sleeps. the fret and the pain of his age away. But her dog whined low on the doorway sill, with his cane to his chin. The old man sat, and the chore girl still sung to the bees, stealing out and in. And the song she was singing ever since in my ear sounds on. Stay at home, pretty bees, fly not hence. Mistress Mary is dead and gone. John Greenleaf Whittier.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was beautiful to hear from you. And now, Libby, you've got another Telling the Bees poem, and this one is from a lady poet.
That is correct. So this is a poem by an Irish writer by the name of Catherine Tynan. And she wrote this particular Telling the Bees version for a family friend of hers who was, he was only 19 when he was killed in the Battle of Somme in World War I. And so this is Catherine Tynan's version of her poem called Telling the Bees for Edward Tennant. Tell it to the bees, lest they umbrage take and fly away. That dearest boy is dead, who went singing blithe and dear by the golden hives last year. Curly head, ah, curly head. Tell them that the summer's over mignonette and clover. Oh, speak low and very low. Say that he was blithe and bonny, good as gold and sweet as honey. All too late the roses blow. Say he will not come again, not in any sun or rain. Heart's delight, ah, heart's delight. Tell them that the boy they knew sleeps out under rain and dew in the night, ah, in the night. By Catherine Tynan.
Thank you, Libby. Boy, that's I can still feel her grief. Amazing. And on a lighter note, I've got a poem by Mr. Gene Toomer. He was born in 1894 and died in 1967. And his poem is titled Beehive. But first, I'll wait for that jet to pass over across the sky that I don't think our listeners can hear, but I'll wait anyway. Out of respect to Gene Toomer and his poem, Beehive. Within this black hive tonight, there swarm 1,000,000 bees. Bees passing in and out the moon. Bees escaping out the moon. Bees returning through the moon. Silver bees intently buzzing, silver honey dripping from the swarm of bees. Earth is a waxen cell of the world comb, and I, a drone, lying on my back, lipping honey, getting drunk with silver honey. Wish that I might fly out past the moon and curl forever in some far-off farmyard flower. That was Beehive by Gene Toomer, and I'll provide some information on the website about who he is. He's got a big history that I think people should just click and read about. Now I'd like to go back to Libby Webber, who is here with her book entitled Risk Averse, A Year in Daily Sonnets. And, Libby, there are some bee sonnets in there, aren't there?
There are. There are, in fact, very few topics that I did not cover in my year of daily sonnet writing. So there is one indeed that is all about bees and honey. And so it is called A Tale of Honey from July 2nd. A poet sees the flower as a sign of transience and beauty that will fade. But to a plant, a blossom's fair design ensures its pollinators will be stayed. And pollinators, heedless of the part they play in reproduction, blindly seek to take their tithe of sweetness and depart. No poetry the process would bespeak, unless one thinks of honey and the bees, who perishable nectar do devour and metamorphose it with seeming ease to that which never spoils. Whence came this power to change mortality to perpetuity, an evolutionary superfluity? That is A Tale of Honey from July 2nd.
And you've got one that's about pollinating, I think?
I do. The lovely thing about, well, one thing that I find interesting about bees is that we know them as pollinators, but they are not the only pollinators. In fact, there are some plants that are older than bees.
So they had to exist without them, that's for sure.
Correct. So I would like to read August 6th sonnet entitled Fancy Plants.
That's punny.
It is. I was about to say it's one of many, many puns in this book.
I approve entirely, Miss Libby Webber.
I'm delighted to hear it. So here we have Fancy Plants from August 6th. Magnolia, crowned with pearly blossoms, stands with silvered boughs aloft in shapely poses. Enameled leaves like shining emerald hands, the luminous flower's scent delights all noses. A striking scion of an ancient race, whose forebears predate bees for pollination, arboreal epitome of grace and source of taxonomic irritation. But when leaves brown and fall upon the ground, the work of photosynthesis will shift to mischief and creating startling sounds, crack underfoot and clattering adrift. Though lovely they may be, it is preferred to love them for their sense of the absurd.
Thank you, Libby Webber. So there's plenty of time for bees and plenty of time for other pollinators, too. So I'm glad you had that. Got to represent all the pollinators. So it's been fun to display these bee poems next to this exhibition of bees that James Hung donated to the library, representing all of his students that collected bees over a period of 6 or so years. And every single species is there of San Diego native bees. And it's great to celebrate them through poetry as well, and not just see them with a pin through them in a wonderful exhibit case. Now, there's a lot of other bee poems from a lot of other spectacular people. In fact, Sylvia Plath, some of her final published poems were bee poems, and they were spectacular. And in fact, she had recently become a beekeeper, and that was a big inspiration, I assume, for these bee poems, which were much more than just about bees. And I love those poems, but they're not in the public domain, so we won't be reading those today. But Libby Webber, you've got some public domain bee poems with you.
I have indeed.
I think you might even have, and you're representing well with men poets and lady poets too. So what have you got there for us?
All right. Well, a little background on this poem. There is a current researcher in the Division of Biological Sciences at University of California, San Diego, whose name is James Nye, and he studies bees. And in the division, they will sometimes give talks that are aimed towards a lay audience, which am me. And so he gave a talk about bees, which was wonderful, fascinating, and horrifying at the same time, because bees are very much not like people. And some of them have acid bites, and some of them have no stings but can hurt you anyway. And they're fascinating in their variety. But Dr. Nye chose to open his talk about bees with a quote from this poem by William Butler Yeats, from the poem, very famous one, called The Lake Isle of Innisfree. And you shall hear why, as there are indeed references to bees. So this is Yeats's The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always, night and day, I hear lake water lapping with low sounds on the shore, While I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. Yeats's The Lake Isle of Innisfree. And incidentally, if you have a computer nearby, you would be well advised to go to YouTube and search for Yeats, Yeats, and Innisfree, Innisfree, because there is actually a recording of Yeats himself at a rather advanced age reading this poem. So you can actually hear the poet reading this work.
I assume it's from a wax cylinder.
I don't actually know the provenance, and I wish I did, so I shall have to apparently go and listen to it again and find out.
We'll look into it further, we will. But we want to represent now, and I think you've got some Emily Dickinson there, too.
I have indeed. I'm very fond of Emily Dickinson. She, in addition to Shakespeare, she was definitely an inspiration when I was writing daily poetry, because I took so much inspiration from walking under trees or walking into lemons or and various things. So let's see. So I'm going to read two very short ones first. And the first one I think is rather delightful. Emily Dickinson loved to gather flowers and bring little bouquets to her friends, and she would write poems to go with it. And so this is one of Emily Dickinson's poems that she wrote for a friend with a bouquet of flowers. And it's called I Stole Them from a Bee, referring to the flowers, of course. I stole them from a bee because thee, sweet plea, he pardoned me.
That's an adorable poem.
I am very, very fond. Actually, a good friend, a friend of mine from the choir Sacra Profana, who's also a composer by the name of Colin Barkley. He composed an entire suite of songs for choir, and this was one of them. And I was absolutely charmed, both by the story of Emily Dickinson bringing flowers and poetry to her friends, and by his lovely compositions. And
she has several bee poems. I think you have at least two more with you.
I do. This one isn't. I don't believe is one of her flower delivery pieces, but it is also short and it is also delightful. This is Emily Dickinson's To Make a Prairie. To make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee, one clover and a bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few.
Those are great. And they are very musical, too, aren't they? I can see why your colleague chose them.
I think it was in high school that I first sang music of Emily Dickinson's, poetry by Emily Dickinson that had been set by composers. There have been many wonderful settings of her, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and other cheery pieces like that. But she also took, as you hear, a lot of inspiration from nature.
Who wrote the I Am Nobody? Was that her?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I love that as a little art song version of I Am Nobody.
Oh, there's some beautiful ones.
And I think you have one final one with you.
I do, and this one is called The Bee by Emily Dickinson. And this features some really cool imagery that when I was just looking through it, I had to stop and think about, wait a second, I don't know this word in the sense that it's being used. Oh, but we should think of it as the verb and not the noun, that sort of thing. So she plays beautifully with language, and that's one thing I love about her. So this is Emily Dickinson's The Bee. Like trains of cars on tracks of plush, I hear the level bee. A jar across the flower goes. Their velvet masonry withstands until the sweet assault their chivalry consumes, while he, victorious, tilts away to vanquish other blooms. His feet are shod with gauze, his helmet is of gold, his breast a single onyx, with chrysoprase inlaid. His labor is a chant, his idleness a tune. Oh, for a bee's experience of clovers and of noon.
Well, thank you for bringing those in.
My pleasure.
And I can't wait for next year to come so we can do more bees.
And I just bet that Emily Dickinson has a lot more poems that feature bees that I haven't even found yet. So
well, we'll keep digging. We'll keep looking.
That is a good assignment.
I do have a big folder with me of bee poems. So we'll keep that around for next year. Now, always at the finale of the show, I read something from young Liam Flynn, and that will come soon enough. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the San Diego Book Crawl, which is this very weekend if you're listening live. You're going to be out of town,
Sadly.
Libby, which is such a shame.
I will be at a wedding, and sadly I won't get to read any bee poems there, but I've been following. So it's Mysterious Galaxy who are involved.
Yes, and also
Catapult,
Warwick's and Verbatim and Catapult and UC San Diego Bookstore. There are 11-ish independent bookstores in town, probably more, of course, but 11-ish that we kind of come to top of the head immediately. And, I think most of our listeners can understand that this book crawl is based upon maybe a pub crawl, but it's more wholesome. And this very weekend, so Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, people are visiting these independent bookstores with a little passport that you pick up when you're there. And you have to, if you buy some little trinket for $5 at one bookstore and then visit at least 4 others and buy some sort of little trinket, you get a stamp in your passport book, and then you get an amazing tote bag or an amazing pin that was designed by a local author and illustrator that people adore, Susie Garamani. And it's I'm going to be participating in the one at UC San Diego. I'm going to be a musical act there that day. But what I'm going to do is people are going to visit me, and we're going to turn their name into a musical motif, and then perform it with each other. And I'm going to bring my harp and my glockenspiel and my theremin, and they can play on anything they want. I'll give them a little bit of training, and I'm sure it's going to be an injury-free day. I am sure of it. So I hope you'll join me at the UC San Diego Bookstore this very Saturday. They're going to be open 10 to 4, and that's when I'll be there too, 10 to 4. And I'll be there with my instruments and some little half sheets of paper that will become a musical score. We're going to use some standard notation and some non-standard notation to write out your name. For instance, your name is Libby. And normally in music, we just have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But we also have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And what is la sharp? Li. And then B, we've got B, so B and B. And the Y, well, maybe, I'm not sure what we'll do,
You can gliss up at the end to make it interrogative sounding.
Perhaps so. But we can also steal the I again earlier, and that can be a Roman numeral I, 1, which could represent the tonic triad C, E, G. So you have a very musical name, of course. So that'll be fun. And maybe the Y will, as you mentioned, represent the gliss of a question. Why? So maybe that's how your little motif will end. So hope to see you there. Now, I guess maybe I should read, before I completely lose track of time, this short entry from young Liam Flynn. Now, Liam, it's always better if you sit in here with us and sit near a microphone, because when you laugh at your own story, it's so amusing to me. You can sit in Gabe's chair, because he went off to the bathroom, I think. So you go right there. Oh, there's Oops, Gabe came back, but he doesn't mind. Sit. No, it is important, because your laughter should always underscore your story. Now, I did ask young Liam Flynn to make sure that he had a B in this story. And he said, well, look, there's a B. And he showed me the preposition before. So I guess that's true. I guess there really is a B in here, so it passes the test. So again, here's a story, an original story from Liam Flynn. Today was another exciting day on Planet Sweatpants, in Sweatpants Universe. Homer's friend Chris invited himself over to visit for a few days. Homer then went to his favorite store, Sweatpants Co., to do some rather serious shopping. He ended up filling 2 large shopping carts with stuff. All the stuff had no problem fitting in the car to bring it home, as there was still some room left for more. At home, after Homer unloaded his car and put everything away, he made himself pizza for a snack. He tossed the pizza dough a little too high, and it stuck to the ceiling before falling on his head. He then exclaimed, "Who turned off the lights?" "Oops, never mind. I just have a tasty hat." After his snack, Homer proceeded to hide food everywhere as Chris was arriving later that afternoon. He also threw a pizza and other food onto the roof of his house. When Chris arrived, Homer answered the door in his underwear, and Chris told him to put some pants on like a normal person. Homer then proceeded to step outside in his underwear and help Chris bring his stuff from the car. Chris then yelled, "Why the moldy food? Can't you put some pants on when you help me unload my car?" Afterwards, he spotted the pizza and other food on the roof after Homer finally put some pants on and questioned, "Why is there food on your roof?" Inside the house, Chris found a half-eaten hamburger on top of a lamp and said, "It's a shame someone left this here, but I'll eat it." Then he picked it up and ate it before finding some fries on the ground, which he picked up and threw away. Then the two of them sat down on the couch to have some iced tea and catch up on things when Chris smelled something and moved the couch just to, make quite possibly the largest discovery in the zip code of a whole bunch of food, partially eaten, half eaten, and a bite taken out of food under the couch. Some had mold growing, as some were stale, some was rather fresh, and a few pieces were rock hard. They spent a few hours getting the whole house cleaned up before going to meet up with Troy at Sweatpants Hakal for dinner. Which was, they have Mexican food. Chris told Troy about the whole incident with food everywhere, even on the roof. After dinner, the three of them went to see a movie. In the movie theater, Homer kept farting and stinking up the whole place. After the movie, they went to Dohai for a second dinner. And on the way there, Chris scolded Homer about farting so much in the movie theater, how it smelled bad and that it's rude. He also yelled at him to open the window when he farted in the car. At Dohai, Homer ground plenty of food into the carpet, chewed with his mouth open, talked with his mouth full, and confused the automatic flushing urinal to keep flushing nonstop. Chris then went to use the restroom, and Homer said, "Don't fall in." Then got a funny look in return. Chris saw the constantly flushing urinal and told the cleaning guy about it. After the three of them left Dohai, the cleaning guy saw all the food ground into the carpet and said all kinds of funny words in Spanish while trying to clean it up. The end. Thank you for that story, which actually had a be theme because of the preposition before. Thank you, Liam Flynn. Thank you for joining us again tonight here at WSRadio.com. So glad that your father brought you over. It's always good to have both you and your father here. You because you write a story, and your father because he's second in command of flipping all the switches. Yes. Excellent. Well, if Wade is in the house, I think I should start flailing my arms around because I think we've come to the end of another episode of Either Tale Radio Theater. Normally we go for a full hour, but I think what I want people to do is meditate about bees and their importance. And if you have an important family story to tell, do tell it to the bees.
Attention coaches, authors, speakers, and business owners. Please pay close attention to what I'm about to say if you want to secure massive visibility fast and generate thousands of highly qualified leads without spending a dime on advertising or marketing. The easiest way to make this happen is to appear as a guest on the world's most popular podcast. We recently came across an awesome resource that provides detailed contact information for 240 new media influencers who are looking for guests just like you. It's called the Ultimate Directory, and for a limited time, you can get the preview edition of the directory absolutely free. That's right, for free. It's time for you to get the visibility you and your business deserve and connect with the world's leading icons of influence who can make you famous with the push of a button. Get your free preview edition of the Ultimate Directory right now at www.myultimatedirectory.com. That's myultimatedirectory.com.
You were born to do one amazing thing, but most people spend a lifetime trying to identify what it is. If you're in a job you don't like or are unemployed, if you're in a state of transition or just can't shake that nagging feeling that you were meant and made to do something extraordinary, then the Reinvention Workshop is exactly what you need. Led by award-winning self-help author Steve Olsher, the Reinvention Workshop will forever change your life. The Reinvention Workshop takes you step by step through Steve's proven formula that has helped so many people get on the right path and clear about what they were born to do. Take the first step to realizing the life you deserve and desire by visiting the reinventionworkshop.com today. No more delays. No more denial. Reconnect with your true self. Learn to live with purpose and conviction and become who you were born to be. The world is waiting for you. What are you waiting for? Log on to the reinventionworkshop.com today. That's the reinventionworkshop.com.
Too much to do? Not enough time to get it done? Call on the experts at Another 8 Hours for your business support needs. By partnering with Another 8 Hours, we allow you to focus on the more important matters, like being in front of your clients, doing what you do best, rather than being stuck at a desk poring over paperwork, rummaging through emails, returning phone calls, and struggling to get everything done by yourself. Meanwhile, your family and social life are going down the drain. Go to another8hours.com or call 8 more hours. That's 866-734-6877.